All right, hey there, welcome back to TwinStick Garage. My name is Mark. I like to work on old trucks and old cars. And in today's episode, I'm going to continue building up the Bandit TransAM.
Let's all ask.
It's amazing that 50 years later, All right, so picking up where I left off in the last episode, of course I put those beautiful Wilwood brake rotors and calipers on the front, and then I got stalled out at the back because I assumed that this differential was a similar vintage of the car, 1980, and this is actually a more late 90s Camaro differential because the flange registration is a little bit larger diameter. So I wasn't able to install the back brakes, these brackets here. This thing wouldn't fit over the flange registration. So I reached out to the great folks at Wilwood, and they sent me the larger ones, which will actually accommodate this late model Camaro back end with the larger hole size, and I could just swap all the stuff over. And I was planning on doing that today and finishing out the back brakes, but I'm waiting for some T-bolts. I ordered some T-bolts from Quick Performance and they haven't come in yet. So I'm gonna hold off on that till the next episode. And what I thought I might do is transition to the wiring. So I actually got this kit from Painless Wiring because, of course, this car is pretty vintage. It's had a lot of miles on it, a lot of years. And the biggest thing with old projects, with old car projects, is the wiring, because if it's shoddy, if it's tattered, it can get aground. You can actually heat up the wires and even start a fire and burn down your beautiful project. So I thought it made the most sense to actually put in an entire new system from the fuse panel back to all the wires. So the great folks at Painless Wiring sent me this custom kit that they modified slightly to actually work in a 1980 Trans Am. And I have been going through the instructions. I know, not like me, but it's a very detailed manual, and there's a bit of work to actually get this fully installed. So I'll see how far I get today. I don't think I'm gonna get it fully wired, but what I thought originally was this was gonna be a ridiculously hard project, but the wiring actually isn't that complicated. It breaks down into 3 systems. So you kind of got your engine, your lighting, your accessories, and that's pretty much it. I mean, if you break it all down, it's not as complicated as it would seem to actually wire a car. I mean, of course, there's wires that go up to the power door locks or power windows, door locks. There's the wires that run the engine, like I say, and then most of the wiring goes to the lights, signal lights, tail lights, headlights, that type of thing. So I think what I'm gonna do first is I've got to get the old dash out of there. I figure it'll be a lot easier if I have better access, and since I'm replacing the dash anyway, it makes the most sense to take that out of the car. So I'll drop the column, and then there's still a few more bolts to get that old crusty red dash out of the car. And then what I'll do is, what Painless recommends is to lay out all the wiring. So I'll lay out this new fuse panel and kind of get myself sorted, and then yeah, rip off the Band-Aid and see if I can't get this thing installed. Okay, so first up, I'm gonna get the steering wheel off of here, and then I'm gonna drop the column down to give myself some extra space. And actually looking at it further, this is still that red column, so I may have to take this out of here and paint it, or maybe I can paint it in situ. So my whole vision with this is what I wanna do is paint the inside of the car, because I gotta get rid of this cheap plastic cover. I actually wanna get a whole replacement dash, but surprisingly, it's hard to find a restored or a new dash for this. Oh, actually, look at that. I actually had it unbolted. Well, stay up there until I get the column out of the way. So I got to get rid of all this red. The red up here, and that's why I took most of this apart, is I want to get this painted black. This obviously needs to be painted black, and then a new dash put in there. So I think I still got a few more bolts underneath here, and then I can take this whole dash out. I got to actually, there's some plugs that go to the back of the gauges, and obviously the speedo cable, and then I can get this whole dash out of here, and then that'll give me more access to get in here and take a closer look at the existing fuse block that's down below there that'll need to come out of there. Okay, I think that's everything. And definitely knee pads are your friend doing a project like this. And I have to say, having a T-roof car is so much easier because I can just stand up and crawl in. It's so much more open and I can stand up and having the windshield glass removed. So when you're disassembling a car, the more you can take out of it, the easier it's going to be. But I think that's everything. We'll find out here. Come on. What's still hanging up? I'm still caught. Oh, what's this? That looks like the cable. Oh, the mice have been up there too. Oh, how nice. That looks like the cable to run the vents. A couple more screws to get that out of there. Oh yeah, they've been in the air conditioning vents. Oh, I am so sick of mice. I tell you what. Okay, I think that did it. There it goes. One dash. That needs a little bit of work. But the shell itself is in good shape. So there's a guy named Al Tosh that does restorations on these, so maybe I could send him this. And he puts new foam on it and a new black shell. Okay, I'll probably take this out of here. Yeah, the plastic's, like I say, still in decent shape. Doesn't look broken. It was just the cover that was all dried up, weathered, and cracked. This vent can probably come off of here. There goes my daughter in her hot rod Lincoln. Oh, that's a smaller size. Okay. That's the thing I love about working on the big trucks, is there's no metric. There are all these little nuts and bolts here on this car. Are making me go into my old toolbox and dig out all the metric sockets. Okay. What I'll do is I'll put this plug back in. Now, where was the... Yeah, these guys. There. Okay. Dash is officially out of the car. I still got to figure out how to get the headlight guy out of there. The trick with these is this little release button. So you just pull out the deal all the way like you're turning the headlights on. And then press that button, and out it comes. So I think it has to go out forward, because this bracket's never going to fit through that hole there. There. And we'll just put him back on there. And then I'll put it back in the car, because I have a feeling I'm going to need this before the dash goes back in. Make sure all the headlights work. But as you can see, getting the dash out of there really opens things up nicely. Okay, so this was the actual, obviously the Pontiac Firebird had different models. The Formula, I forget what the middle one was. And then there's the Trans Am, which is the loaded version. So this was like the WS4, I think that's the number, where it has all the bells and whistles, power windows, locks, all that fun stuff. Air conditioning. So there's a bit more wiring, but even my parts car in the back is Spree. That was the middle one. My parts car in the back is a Formula. So worst case, I can go back there and try and sort this out, but it would have the same general wiring. They just maybe wouldn't terminate, or they'd have a bunch of wires terminated because they didn't go to the fancy little lights and switches and that type of thing. Now this looks intimidating, but it's really not all that bad. I'm hoping I can get that fuse panel out of there. I shouldn't have to cut too many wires according to the instructions, that you can just disconnect a lot of the plugs. And I don't really want to replace a lot of the original wiring, because this was well wrapped in loom tape, had protection around it, and it never really got moved, not like the wiring on the doors. I mean, as you can see, look at that, that's just a fire waiting to happen. So the wiring that goes from the fuse panel out will all be new with the painless wiring kit. But I'm going to try and retain as much of this as possible and just kind of tie into it as the instructions say. So what I should be able to do now, I'm going to try and get that old fuse panel out of there, and hopefully a lot of this wiring goes with it. I don't want to cut any wires or any that I have to, or as few as I have to, because I want to retain the original panel just so I can refer to it. All right, so I mentioned it in an earlier episode that it makes sense to take out the inner fender if you're going to tackle wiring, because now there's nice easy access to the original bulkhead. And as I keep saying, I'm going to try and retain all the original wiring as it is and just try and disconnect it and pull it out of there. That way I can have it as a reference in the future. But so the fuse panel's on the other side here. There's 4 screws that hold it in place, and then you've got the bulkhead, and the bulkhead goes to the looms. Now let's see what we got here. Well, that's just a vacuum line. Oh, there's power antenna. Oh, that's interesting. They don't come through on the fuse block. They just come through the bulkhead there. So I should be able to run those back, take that plug out of there and run those back, keep those original. But here's the engine wiring. So you got your power to the battery, your ground. I did mark all these out. So it'll be good to have, like I say, for future reference if I need it. Button switch beside carb. Okay, whatever that is. Ground bolt, of course. Just all grounding. What's this? Plug behind, throttle. Now, a lot of this I'm not going to need. Like I said, I'm just going to run new wiring. Temp sensor. Okay, that's cool. I should be able to make sense of most of this, but I'm going to run, I've got my new Holley EFI kit. So there's going to be a new fuel tank that goes in the back. It's got an integral fuel pump, and then the Holley 2.0 Sniper 2.0 system, which you just need a power wire. So I'll run an accessory wire from the new painless fuse block, and it'll just go right into there. And so then from that box, it runs the distributor. So I'm not going to need a lot of this original wiring. So this should really clean up the car and just keep the wires that I need. But again, I'll see if I can get that bulkhead off of there and then pull all these looms out of the way and clean this mess up. But this is fun. To be honest, I've never done wiring before. I'm kind of learning as I go here, just like everything I do on this channel. I mean, I never built a Peterbilt before either. But God hates coward, and it's always fun learning new things. And when I get the wiring done in this, it is a little intimidating, but I think if I just take it step by step and get all new wiring in, I can have peace of mind that hopefully the car won't burn to the ground, and it'll look a hell of a lot cleaner, because the only thing that'll be left are the wires that are actually being used and going somewhere. 10 mil socket for this bulkhead connector. I guess just like when I was working on the Pete, and I went to Princess Auto and I got a whole pile of 9/16 sockets and wrenches, I'm gonna need the same now for the car with 10 mil. Okay, come on. Been on there for a while. There it goes. Oof. Okay, so that's that. So this is the bulkhead side with the wiring that goes everywhere. So I'll cut all little zip ties and take this out of here. And this is also the plug for the wiper motor. It was telling me to do some pre-work. So now at least I know the wiper motor plugs. But that's basically gonna come out of there now. I gotta bring these guys back in, and then I can unbolt the fuse block. And then I've been reading through the pre-work and laying out all the wiring. So this is actually pretty well done. So they've got the descriptions on the wire. I don't know if you can see it there. Like this one here is light ground, dome light. So they're actually very well laid out. And then these are all the rear wiring for rear tail lights. Let's see, you see that there? Fuel pump, left reverse light, license plate light. So this, I'm gonna leave this loom for now, and that guy just plugs in to this plug here. And then they've actually set it up pretty well for the GM car. So the guy that actually made this for me did customize it a little. So these are the plugs here for the ignition. What does it say? Ignition switch, ignition start, starter solenoid. And where these go, and they actually, the really cool thing about this is they actually color code them to the original colors that were on there. So these are the original plugs, and they go into this loom that's connected into the fuse block. So I'm gonna pull this whole thing out of here. Well, I guess when I unbolt the fuse block, it'll come back this way. And then these plugs, these new plugs, will just go right back in here. Now you can see when I turn the key, it works out a little rod there in the middle. And then that's what makes the connection down on this guy here. And then it'll send the power, once these are connected in, to the starter solenoid and start the car. So that's actually pretty slick. I was actually worried I was gonna have to do some wiring in the column, but they've got that set up, like I say, in a slick fashion. Same thing for the headlight wiring. What else? This is the high beam, so check this out. So it doesn't have the button on the floor, it's a little newer. So this is when they started switching over to high and low on the signal light. And as I do that, it moves that plug back and forth. And then this was the plug that went in there for high-low. And it says locate the wires for high-low, dimmer switch. So now I know where those are, because I think I'll actually have to retain this plug and then cut the wires and then tie it in. But the cool thing is they've actually, like I say, got the same colors. So that helps. And then having the description on the actual wire. Headlight, light switch, power, orange. Yeah, so these are all the wires here. And as you can see on headlight power, so that's the plug I'll have to reuse, and I'll just have to connect in to these. But there's the orange for the headlight switch power. So I just need to retain these plugs, and like I say, when I'm ready to connect it all in, all these wires will go in there. But as you can see, the colors are all the same, so it should be pretty easy to figure that out. And just some nice butt connectors, crimps, and some shrink wrap should make that tip top. So yeah, coming together. I mean, it's a slow process, but I really want to take my time with this. But I think it's going to be something that I can actually accomplish, especially with the great instruction book that they give you here. So there's the process for putting the new fuse block in. I just need to make sure they're 1/4 inch holes after I take the old one out, and I'll set this guy in place. And then after I get it in place, just like I just took off the bulkhead mount, and I'm going to get all those wires out of there, this guy will plug on to the other side, on the engine side. And then here's all the wiring for, what do we got? So alternator, power, battery, starter. So again, this guy will be on this side. And all the engine run wiring will just come out of there. I'll obviously have to put it all in loom, and it'll go to the headlights and the marker lights and all that fun stuff. So I think, like I say, I think I can figure this out. It looks a little intimidating when you start slapping down these big rolls of wire, but I think it'll be cool when it's done. Oh, there you go. One wiring harness out of a 1980 Pontiac Firebird. It's amazing that runs the entire car. Okay, so now we got a nice opening, and that's where the new fuse block's gonna go. So those were just tapped holes. So I got to drill those out to 1/4 inch because the new fuse blocks just has through bolts that goes in there. But before I go ahead and start putting new wiring in, I've got to get the bulkhead side of the system or the wiring out of here. So I'll disconnect everything and mark it out. So this one here goes to the horsing valve, which I assume sends a signal to the brake, or when that may, no, I think that's probably low brake alarm on the dash is when that guy goes off. So there's a fluid problem in the proportioning valve. It sends a signal here and then signals that light up on the dash. Now, all of this wiring here, I'm not going to need. It's still going to be good to have, again, as reference, but none of it I'm going to need. Like even the, here, let me show you. So this guy will come out as well. Now I'm going to have to obviously retain this, because the wiring is just going to be a bare wire that comes off of there that'll say left marker light, and then I'll have to wire in. So there's going to be one for power and then one for ground. And I'll have to disconnect the ground there and just take everything off of here, all the wiring to the left and right headlights, and then take this all out. And then once I put the new fuse block in, I can put the new bulkhead on and start unwinding these wires and laying them out. So left marker, left headlight, right headlight, all that fun stuff. This is cool. I'm enjoying this. All right, so before I go and pull all the wiring out for all the headlights, I'm thinking, because I gotta tie these wires in that come off the bulkhead into the wires into the connectors anyway, why don't I leave all the wiring that goes to the headlights in situ, which is basically this loom here, and I'm just gonna cut all these guys, because I have to believe that these color-coded ones are gonna actually just tie in like that. So I think what I'm gonna do is just cut all this right here, and I'll have to ring them all out and see where they all go. But I'm thinking that might be an easier setup, because then I don't have to run it all through all the loom, because this wiring, again, it's all protected, and it's all been clipped in place. Here, let me show you. See, it runs up and through here into all these little plugs that go into the headlights and the signal lights in the front. And I don't know if that's worth mucking with and running on. I mean, I always could later if I wanted to, but I think that might be the path of least resistance for now, and just leave that in place. And then the other thing I was thinking of is, since I'm in here, before I go and put this bulkhead on, because it's going to be right in the way of the bolts for the brake booster and the brake reservoir, I'm wondering if, for the master cylinder, I'm wondering if it makes sense to unbolt this guy now and maybe get my booster in place. Could always add the master cylinder when I get back to doing brakes, but I think this would be a good time to swap out the booster, because I can get good access to those nuts there. Yeah, that's the thing with project cars. You start working on something and then you realize something else needs to be done. And unfortunately, this reservoir is still full of brake fluid, so I gotta drain all that out of there too. I'm hoping I can just take it off the booster and then just tip it into a pail. Like that. We bend it up a bit. Ooh, that is one rusty booster. All right, now I'm gonna try and get those nuts off right against the firewall. sure don't want to do this job again. So as you can see, it's hard to reach in here. I can't imagine what a brutal job it would be if the engine was in place. And after they put the brake booster on, there was a bunch of this firewall glue that they just sprayed in there. So the threads were covered in it, the nut was covered in it, and it was that's just a brutal job. But that's the last nut there. Hopefully I don't drop it. Come on. Okay, this thing should come out of here now. There we go. I guess I gotta release it from the inside. The rod that's connected to the brake pedal. And then it should come out of there. Oh, I'll just go under. Yeah, there was just a little clip there that I pulled off. And now the push rod should come off of there. I might need a screwdriver. Are you gonna fall or are you gonna sit there? There we go. One crusty brake booster. So as you can see, it's really opened it up in there and allowed a lot more natural light to shine through. So it should be nice and easy to put the fuse block on there. What I figured I'd do though is, since it's all clean, I'll give a little bit of flat black spray paint in there and just make it look a little nicer before I cover everything up. Good old flat black. You can't go wrong with flat black. Again, this is stuff that you don't want to look at. So this takes your, I love flat black because then your eye is naturally drawn to the shiny chrome and aluminum on the engine. Oh, just like when it left the Pontiac factory in 79, or I guess it would have been 80. Okay, cool. All right, so here's the new booster that I got from Butler Performance. Now, I believe it's Gen 1 racing products, but if you're interested in getting one of these for your second gen F-body, you can just reach out to Butler Performance and they'll hook you up. Now, the big benefit of this booster over the stock one is, because I was working with Butler and I said, I want chop. I want a real lumpy cam where the thing barely idles. And the boys at Butler were like, okay, well, we'll give you something that's reasonable. That has a good chop, but it still will be able to, because you want to be able to still have brakes when you're sitting idling in a light. And of course, this takes vacuum. If you don't know, it takes vacuum off the engine and kind of boosts it up and allows you to make power brakes instead of having a manual brake. But the problem is when you have a lumpy cam at idle, you're not generating a lot of vacuum, so you don't get a lot of assist with the booster. So this particular product here, it actually has a 30% more assist. So if it had a stock engine, you could just drop a feather on the pedal and it would start applying the brakes. But with a lumpy cam engine, it actually gives you a little more. It'll take what little the engine is giving and make it feel like a stock power brake pedal. Now, unfortunately, it's a universal kit, so it doesn't have the same rod, but it does have this guy here, which is adjustable, and the diameter of the hole is exactly the same. So I think what I can do is, once I get it to the right spot, I can probably just zip cut off the second side, because I only need the one side there to go over that little stump on the brake pedal lead, or the brake pedal kind of arm that comes down there, and then just put the clip on, and it should be good. Now, before I put this guy on here, anything with brakes, I like to be a little extra cautious. So I'll put just a touch of Loctite on these threads, because I don't want anything loosening off. Brakes is one thing you don't want, is a non-negotiable. So I'll tighten that down, and then I should be able to put this back into the car. Hopefully my flat black paint is dry. There we go. Yeah, I'll leave that on there for now. You stay and watch the game. I'm going back. I gotta stop putting that on Saturdays. Get myself distracted. Okay, brake booster is in. All Loctited and bolted tight. And I got the pedal connected. Mint. Okay, what was I working on again? Oh yeah, wiring. Okay, I guess I'm ready to put in the fuse block. What am I on, page 19 of like 60? Oh well, still making progress. So what I'll do is I'll drill out the threaded holes there to 1/4 inch, and then I should be able to put the fuse block in place. All right, so putting in the fuse block, it said this next step will require a helper. And I almost saw that as a challenge to say, no, it won't, I can do this myself. But actually, I couldn't. There was no way to hold this in place and hold those screws through. They only go through about the firewall, about 1/2 inch, and try and keep it in place. Even tried to prop it up, but it wasn't happening. So I called the beautiful Mrs. TwinSticks out here, and she comes and looks at the TV, and she's like, oh, you're watching this again? Yep. She goes, how can you watch that movie over and over and over again? And I don't know, probably some sort of tism. But anyway, so I got the nuts on there. This is nice and tight now, and I know my future self is going to thank me for putting on and taking the time to put the brake booster in place, because once the bulkhead plug is on there, this would have just been a nightmare to try and get those nuts done. So good, that's in place. So now what I can do is get to the electrical jelly and squish a little bit in there, and then I can put the bulkhead plug on there and tighten that down. So before I put the bulkhead on, I was reading through the manual here, and it was talking about how there's a couple of optional plugs that have keyed power. So you still they're unfused, you gotta add a fuse to them, a 10 amp fuse, and then you can run them through a relay. So I'm thinking I'm gonna use those, because the two good purposes for that would be the engine electric cooling fan and the electric pump back in the Holly fuel tank. So I'm gonna run those out of there. It'll be key powered coming out of the bulkhead. You've just gotta add your own little connector and add the wires in there, because again, they're optional. They don't wanna have power going to any wires that are unused in the engine compartment, because of course they could touch ground and cause all kinds of trouble. So I'm going to just add in, I've already added one. I'm just going to add in the second one there, and like I say, then I can run it, because I got a fuse panel that I purchased that I'm going to mount on the inside of the inner fender, and that way I can just run these wires from here. It'll be keyed power, run it into pin 86 on the relay, and then I can have power, like I say, for the fan and for the fuel pump. So we'll take 1/4 inch off of that. Now these little connectors, they give you a whole bunch of extra connectors in this Painless kit. And I was just reading through the manual, so you got 2 spots to crimp together. The first spot grabs the outer part of the wire, and then the second one on the inner grabs the copper part. And you just pinch them together. Look at that. Just look at it. And then the second one grabs the actual wire. So then this connector, this pin, blade pin, goes into the block. Looks like I bent those just a touch. Let's see if that works. And you reach through and grab it and give it a tug. Oh, come on. Get in there. It's getting late in the day. TwinSticks is getting tired, but pretty happy with the progress made. I mean, I wasn't naive to think that this would be, there we go, that this would be done in one day. But any progress is progress, right? That's what it looks like on the inside. Just maybe want to straighten it a touch so it doesn't go in crooked. Okay, now I put dielectric grease in for all of the spots where there actually is a female connector, and that just helps with preventing corrosion. Now, of course, all these blades are here, and you want to make sure they go on straight. So you take your time and just tighten it up little by little. You can't push it in all the way because the bolt's there. So you got to kind of just tighten it up and then give it a wiggle. Make sure everything's seating straight. Again, just tighten it a little, give it a wiggle. Just make sure all those blades are seating as they should. Yeah, that's feeling pretty good. Okay, and now here's my 2 wires to go to my relay box. All right, so there you go. That is how to physically install a painless wiring kit in your 2nd gen F-body car. I mean, that was definitely pretty painless. Really happy with the way that turned out. We'll see how painless it's going to be to actually terminate all these wires. But as I've shown, the manual is very detailed. All the wires are labeled with where they go. So I've just got to actually take the time to route them, route everything to the back. There's a bunch of wires that go through these cover plates and then head up to the back tail lights. So I'll have to run all of that. Again, tie into the rear looms. So all the lights work, but I mean, there's a path there. I don't think it's going to be too bad. It's just going to take some time, like all my other projects. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate your support. Thanks to Painless Wiring for building such a great kit. And with that, I'll wrap it up there. Hope you enjoyed the episode. See you in the next one. And like I always say, don't ever forget, if you got it, truckers brought it.